topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good morning, especially to all of our West Coast listeners. Early good morning. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Every time I see this show coming up, I really get excited about this show because it's such an important show, and there are very few attorneys that actually specialize when it comes to asbestos. And I'm so lucky we've got one of the top attorneys, an attorney, Michael Mandelbrot, with us. He's with us every month. We also replay his show twice during the month. Let's welcome attorney Michael Mandelbrot. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Steve. Thank you very much for having me on. It is early on the West Coast, but as always, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I'm happy to speak with you, and I always start my days early, so it's a good way to get started.
Michael, I got to tell you, your area of law is such a specialty, but it's such an important area. I think about you because you deal, I don't know any other way to say this, but you deal a lot in death. And I tell you, when it comes to asbestos, it's such a scary subject. And I got to tell you, since we spoke last time, Michael, we actually had a couple attorneys that heard your show. And I was looking at the comments on Google about attorneys that specialize in your area. And listen, I know that you work on a contingency basis, but people were really upset with their attorneys never returning phone calls, never getting back with them. And I know how important customer service is to you.
Yeah, it really is. These people our clients are typically from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, and these victims of asbestos disease, they're not used to dealing with lawyers. They don't have the money to pay for lawyers typically, and as a standard, as a practice, we've always taken cases on a contingency and always tried to respond to our clients when they call us. The problem you'll see is these very large firms that have hundreds and hundreds of mesothelioma cases and another couple hundred lung cancer cases each year. And over time, that's thousands and thousands of clients. It's too many. And what happens over time is these clients from a couple years back sort of get forgotten about in these larger firms. They're calling the office, want to know information about their case. And most of the lawyers are working on the newer cases that have come in, the 100 newer cases that they're all focused on. And that's not the way we practice. Me being a solo practitioner, it's always hard to call everybody back immediately, but I make a point to try and return every single telephone call to people who call my office because I know it's important to them, not just clients, but people with just questions. Random people who call my office, I'm happy to answer their questions. I realize there's no legal relationship, but some
A little
people.
about your firm. How
I'm
long
sorry.
have you been concentrating, Michael? How long have you been concentrating in this area?
Great question. Ever since I graduated from law school, which is exactly 30 years now, 30 years that I've been a lawyer. There was a law firm in my hometown that specialized in this area that I started working at before I had even taken the bar. I had just finished law school and was waiting to take it for the first time, took it and passed it the first time, and immediately became a lawyer working there, helping these victims. This firm happens to be one of those larger firms with lots of clients. And so immediately I was out on the road with these people, learning about asbestos diseases, defending depositions with dozens and dozens and dozens asbestos defendants. So it's been 30 years, and from the start, I have made it a point to know these clients, know who they are, where they're from, their backgrounds. And that's one of the reasons I went off on my own, is because these firms become too big, where they really, clients become widgets and not clients. And I want clients to be just that, clients who I know. When a client calls the office, I know who that client is. When a client calls one of these other firms, they have to figure out which paralegal and which attorney is on the case, and then send it to them, and then they've got
intake.
Yeah, and it's just that doesn't happen at my office. And this is what our clients need. These are victims. We haven't really talked much about it, but I'm sure we will. But the focus is on helping sick victims of asbestos-related diseases. And since my law firm has asbestos in its name, the Asbestos Legal Center, I get calls every day about people who have asbestos in their homes. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers have asbestos in their homes and get concerned, because asbestos is a fiber or a mineral that was used in hundreds and hundreds of products and was probably in about 98% of homes built before 1975, and 100% of schools and military bases built before 1975. And so I get calls all the time with people concerned about asbestos in their home. While they are not typically clients, I am always happy to talk to these people and let them know the first thing to do is to take precautions. If it is something that is dusty, or as we call friable, figure out a way to cover it up, or as we say, encapsulate it. This day and age, it is very expensive to abate or remove asbestos or asbestos containing products. And I'm talking about things in homes like drywall, ceiling tile, popcorn ceilings, vinyl flooring. I mean, it is everywhere. And so I will talk to all of these people. These aren't our clients typically because they're not sick. The people we represent are the people who have been exposed to asbestos, typically 25, 30, 40 years ago, and have now developed what we would say is a trademark asbestos-related disease, either mesothelioma, the most serious cancer that I have ever run into, which is terminal 100% of the time. Lung cancer can also be caused by asbestos. Most people who are diagnosed with lung cancer don't realize that lung cancer may have been caused or contributed to by exposures to asbestos. Most people who are diagnosed with lung cancer, doctors will always look back at their smoking history. Did you ever smoke cigarettes? But oftentimes, what doctors and also the patients then don't realize is asbestos may have contributed to the development of that lung cancer. Asbestos also causes a number of other significant diseases and cancers: colorectal cancer, laryngeal cancer, intestinal cancers, and of course, a disease known as asbestosis, which is also a terminal disease of the lungs, but it is not cancer, so it is not as aggressive as a mesothelioma. If somebody is diagnosed with mesothelioma, and I know it's one of the most difficult words to pronounce, mesothelioma is a cancer to the lining of the lung caused by one thing and one thing only: exposure to asbestos, and it is terminal 100% of the time. 100% of the time. And that's why you see a lot of lawyers advertising for these cases. They're very difficult cases for me to get. Obviously, I want to represent anyone with mesothelioma that I can. But these are typically our actual clients, victims of mesothelioma, lung cancer, asbestosis, and these other cancers.
Michael, we just got a question from a listener, and looks like they're in Maui. How do you determine if a person has cancer from asbestos versus smoking? How do you convince a jury it was from the asbestos rather than the smoking?
It's a great question, and typically, obviously, a better question for the medical experts, but having seen so many of these cases, I can definitely tell you there are trademark or signs that we see from victims of asbestos-related diseases. Now, obviously, the cancer itself is, maybe non-small cell lung cancer or adenocarcinoma. Those types of cancers generally are caused by both asbestos and smoking. So at that point, you could say, well, how do you know which one it is if they're exposed to both? Great question. There's other things we look at as well. Typically, a CT of the lungs. So now you're looking for pleural thickening, which is something you typically see in victims of asbestos diseases, and also various forms of scarring in the lungs, which can be formed by both smoking and asbestos, but there's certain signs, I think, because I'm not a doctor, that these radiologists and doctors see on the x-rays or the CT scans, which allow them to make the differentiation. But the biggest thing by far is what we call a pulmonary function test or a breathing test. And these tests are, I guess an individual walks on a treadmill and they've got like an oxygen mask hooked up to them, and it measures their breathing, both their inhalation as well as their exhalation, and various scores related to those after about 10 or 15 minutes on the treadmill. Once we get those scores, you can typically tell based on those scores if somebody's disease is more likely caused by smoking versus asbestos. And there is one particular score on there, and again, I'm not a doctor, it's like F forced vital capacity divided by forced expiration or something to that, and they attribute a percentage to that. If that percentage is high, like over 100, then we typically know that that is more likely caused by asbestos. If that score is under 100 or very low, we typically believe that it is more likely, now this doesn't mean someone doesn't have a case, but it's more likely that their disease is caused by smoking. And that one pulmonary function test, which measures, like I said, different breathing scores, that is the critical one that allows us to differentiate on the lung cancer whether or not it's caused by smoking. And again, it's more for an expert, a doctor, than a lawyer, because I'm just a lawyer. But having seen a number of these cases, I can tell you that is where they testify that you can really see the difference.
Ray in San Jose, thank God for a show like this. Those commercials tell you nothing. Thank you for giving us your time and your knowledge. My question is, what % of your cases are settled out of court?
Great question, Ray. And I'm going to comment on the something you said earlier about the commercials, which tell you nothing. I'll comment on those in a second, but let me answer your question. From my experience, I would say 98 to 99% of cases settle before a judgment or a verdict. 98 to 99%. Very, very high. There are, probably about 250 mesothelioma cases filed every single year. 2,000 mesothelioma cases filed every year around the country. And you maybe hear about 10 verdicts. And this is from lawyers around the country. I know 98% of the lawyers in this field. I get a very good sense of what goes on. And not only do 98% of the cases settle, realize that in these cases, it's not like a typical car accident case where you're going after just one company. In our cases, there's one plaintiff, a sick party or an injured party or their heirs. Of course, we have wrongful death cases as well. But on the other side, when we sue, there might be 30, 40, 50 defendants in a case. So when I say those cases settle, 99% of them do, all of those 45 to 50 defendants either settle or are dismissed before trial. It's not just one, it's like 50 settlements before trial. The big risk on a defendant side is to be what we call the last man standing or the last defendant standing. Because if you're the last defendant standing, you're the one who runs the risk of going to trial. And you're the one who runs the risk of a jury ringing the bell and saying, hey, this is a $20 million, this guy's life is worth $20 million or $30 million. That's a risk that they have by going to trial. They also have a risk of punitive damages, which can also be excessive. Those are designed to punish defendants who engage in horrible conduct, we will call it. And so 99% of these cases settle. Defendants have very big risks. Cases that do go to trial this day and age, that typically go to trial, that I've seen, are cases that are very difficult. Go ahead. Oh, there are cases that are very difficult to prove. For example, recently we started suing Johnson & Johnson for baby powder exposure. Johnson & Johnson is not a company who will come to us and typically settle those cases. Those are cases that typically go to trial. But the defendants, companies who made drywall and brakes and gaskets and pumps and valves and flooring and all the standard asbestos products, the traditional, those companies typically settle in these cases.
Michael, is asbestos still used?
It was banned in 2025 by the Environmental Protection Agency. It is outlawed in the United States and like 50 other countries. However, the recent administration has indicated that they may still allow it in very specific products where it is encapsulated, meaning it is not friable. There is a lot of dispute about that. Other third world countries use asbestos extensively. It is still mined extensively. Advanced countries typically will not, and it has been banned. In the United States, you will not see it in drywall or brakes or joint compound or any of those products. But what's interesting is you still read the back of those products and they have warnings as if there is asbestos in them. And part of it makes me wonder, because all of these products like drywall that are on the shelves today also have a mineral called talc in them that is also mined. With the Johnson & Johnson situation, what we found is that the asbestos fiber and the talc fiber oftentimes get mixed, or they are together in the earth. So these companies who are mining talc, it's contaminated by asbestos. So I have to wonder if some of these products that have talc in them today may not have contamination, but no companies are putting asbestos into their products in the United States today. That primarily stopped in about 1980.
You know, and I'm not surprised. We always get someone asking this question. I'm really enjoying your show. You seem so knowledgeable. Is the movie, this is where we always have someone ask us, Aaron Brockovich, does this have anything to do with what you do and what you represent?
It is a question that we see quite often. I would say the answer is really yes. Similar defendants involved. It is an environmental contamination. In Aaron Brockovich, it was a latent disease where these people, I don't remember, was it the water they were exposed to?
Yes, the water.
And then later in life, these diseases were developing and were also developing in their offspring. We don't have the disease developing in the offspring, but we do have very young people getting sick in a similar way because, say, for example, Joe Smith in Tennessee, who was an insulator, came home from work, had his clothes on, he had his 2-year-old at home, he would pick up his baby, he would drive around in the car with his kids, his wife would wash his laundry, and they would end up getting sick. So we do have younger people get sick as well from asbestos. It's similar because it's an environmental exposure that these companies knew were harming or killing people, continued to sell, make, manufacture, distribute, use and utilize these chemicals or fibers despite the fact knowing that they were killing people, and ultimately they got caught. Asbestos has now harmed millions and millions of people. At least with the situation in Aaron Brockovich, I think it was localized to a particular region or city or lake or river that these people were exposed to. With asbestos, there isn't a spot on the map that asbestos hasn't impacted. Every military base, every power plant, every house, every hospital.
Looks like we've got a lot of people writing in.
Hopefully they're nice
Okay.
questions. As you're looking at those, let me quickly comment. Your previous person mentioned they don't tell you a lot on TV. If you have mesothelioma, here's the commercial.
Right.
If you have mesothelioma, call this number. We'll give you a free book. We've gotten people billions of dollars. You're right.
Yes.
They don't, that's their whole commercial. Okay. What they don't tell you is you've got a very serious disease, a very serious cancer. You have a case that is, if you have mesothelioma, a case that is probably worth between $2 and $7 million, $2 and $8 million. There are ways we can get clients money without ever going to court. You see on the commercials oftentimes 30 billion available. Those are trust funds set up for victims of asbestos diseases that we can access without ever going to court. Somebody calls my office with a pathology report, I can file a claim with those trust funds almost immediately. I don't have to file a complaint, take depositions, serve defendants. That is the other aspect of our, as we'll call it, litigation. We have the trust fund claims, which are incredibly valuable since there's $30 billion out there. And there is, of course, litigation where we go to court. So those commercials don't tell you a lot about the disease, the case. There's only one known cause, exposure to asbestos, how we investigate how these individuals were exposed, walking through their work history, really their entire lives. That they don't tell you that we, or I, for example, have a database, millions and millions of pages, any power plant, shipyard in the entire country, school, hospital. I have a very good idea, if I don't know for certain, who insulated it, who built it, what products were used on those ships, those power plants, who made the boilers, the turbines, all the different asbestos products. Those are critical things to know when you represent people, because those are the companies you go after. It's not just one asbestos industry. You go after each individual company you can show exposed your client to asbestos. And in California, it's not just the company who made the product, like Owens Corning fiberglass. You can go after everyone in the distribution chain, which means the company that mined the fiber, the company that blended the asbestos fiber for example, a drywall company, then the company that actually made the drywall product, then you've got the distributor of the drywall to the supply house, then say you've got a contractor who buys it from the supply house, who then uses the product at a job site and exposes someone to that product. From that one exposure, we have potentially 7 or 8 defendants or claims. The company that blended the company that mined the fiber, the company that blended the fiber, I forgot the company that trucked the fiber to the company that manufactured it. Then you've got the distributor of the fiber to the supply house. You've got the supply house and you've got the contractor. Off one exposure to asbestos, that's 7 potential defendants. That is an example of why companies hate lawyers, because we can sue a lot of different companies from just one little exposure, but it also shows you why there's so many potential companies involved in every mesothelioma case. You're not just suing one company and hoping for a big settlement.
Here's another text from the Baltimore area. They've worked on their docks and waterfront for 20 years. I've always wondered about a lingering cough. What type of people do you see in what professions that usually have this asbestos cancer?
That individual who texted would be a perfect example of the people who call my office. People who have a lingering cough or breathing problems. And when he mentions he works at the docks in Baltimore, all across the coast in the United States, and especially in Baltimore and where I live out in the Bay Area, there were a number of shipyards. And when he says the docks, not only were they doing shipbuilding, there's also a lot of longshore work. That individual is somebody who I would recommend getting in for a chest x-ray, or even better, a CT scan, to be reviewed by an expert trained in identifying asbestos-related diseases. He has exposure, and also he mentioned 20 years. If he says, oh, I worked there, for 6 weeks, I wouldn't be as concerned. But 20 years on the docks is significant. He has a lingering cough. And this is the thing. People might think, well, I smoke too, I've got a lingering cough. Well, is that cough caused by asbestos or smoking? Here's another thing. A lot of people do quit smoking later in life. If you quit smoking, your breathing should get better if your problems or your breathing problems are caused by smoking. If you quit smoking and your breathing problems do not get better, and you had exposures to asbestos, I would think it's more likely your problems were caused by smoking, by asbestos, because asbestos is a progressive disease. It doesn't get better. Once it's in the lungs, you can't get it out. And so it only continues to get worse. I know that medical studies and science has shown that individuals who do quit smoking, there is benefits to the lungs and there is some recovery to the lungs, not with asbestos. That individual I would recommend for a chest x-ray. If he was local to me, I would send him in for one, and we would pay for that.
While we're doing this, give people your phone number, Michael.
We have an 800 number you can always call, but this is my call center. But let me give that to you because it's easy to remember. 1-800-970-DUST, D-U-S-T. And then my office number is 415-895-5175. And I can also be texted to my cell phone at 415-307-2119. That is direct to me. I know very few lawyers in the country who will pass out their cell phone over the internet, but I'm happy to, because I'm confident people who are going to contact me, need assistance. So thank you for asking.
I want people also to understand, Michael, you do so much legwork and so much background work before you realize your first dime. Explain to people how you get paid.
Great. Good question. As you mentioned, all cases are taken on what we call a contingency, or as you'll see in commercials, no fee unless we win. So, and that's the way it always is. I haven't sent out a bill in 30 years. I never plan to. As I said, all cases are taken on a contingency. But there's always, an investment in a case, whether it's a financial investment or, to me, an investment that all the listeners are making now, you're making now, and I'm making, and that is our most valuable resource, time. It takes a lot of time to research these cases, to determine how somebody was exposed, where they were exposed, what products they were exposed to, what claims to file, what defendants to sue, where to file the complaint. And don't get me wrong, I might take in cases that I might say, hey, my office in California is not the best one to handle this. This guy had most of his exposure at shipyards in New York and in Baltimore. I need to make sure that I get this to a lawyer where this case is going to be most valuable for this client. So there is a tremendous amount of investigation. Financially, there's an investment of hiring experts, paying investigators, getting all medical records, work records, military records for all our clients. These things all take time. They've got to be ordered with special forms. Ultimately, though, we know the investment is worthwhile, clearly. Some of the lawyers in my field, well, I think they value money over representation. Some of these lawyers in my field are very, very, very wealthy, some of the richest in the country. And we know that these cases are very serious, but we also know that they're good cases because there's only one known cause of exposure to mesothelioma, and that is asbestos. It's not caused by smoking. It's not caused by different chemicals or fumes or, environmental things or, something in the water. It's caused by exposure to asbestos, period. And so if somebody has mesothelioma, we know we have a great case against the asbestos companies. If you have a car accident case, for example, there's typically a dispute. Who caused it? Did he have his signal on? How fast was he going? In our cases, we don't have those issues. We do maybe in a lung cancer case or in an asbestosis case, but in a mesothelioma case, we don't have that issue. We know we have a great case. There's only one cause of mesothelioma, asbestos. And so we know they're good cases despite the investment. And like I said, I value nothing more than people's time. Our clients' time, your time, my time, it's our most valuable resource. But that is one of the biggest investments of all, is just time. Thankfully, having done this, I know, I've got a database and I've got access to a lot of these things where I can determine who made the boilers on the USS Enterprise in probably 1 minute. Where in the old days, I would have to order the ship records for the Enterprise and thumb through them, and there's a variety of other resources now that we can use, and that I have just through the years and through really studying and researching where asbestos came from, how it got to these different locations, and how my clients were exposed.
Yeah, you just brought up about military. Does a lawsuit recovery impact a military disability?
Great question, and I get this all the time because, say for example, somebody was in the military and they've got a disability, whether or it might be an asbestos disability already. Hey, I was in the Navy, I was on ships, my doctor diagnosed me with asbestos. They might not even know about me in lawsuits, and they may have filed a disability claim with the VA. A lot of other types of VA disability claims that we see in our clients' records. Hearing loss. A lot of individuals on ships say they were out testing bombs and other things and shooting and artillery training. A lot of individuals on ships have hearing loss. So now, having retired from the military, they receive a VA disability. Lots of ex-military receive VA disability. And so the question that I get is, hey, if I file an asbestos case, will it impact the money I'm receiving from the VA for my disability? And the answer is absolutely not. All our recovery is 100% separate from a VA disability. But not only that, if my client is not receiving 100% disability from the VA, which obviously entitles them to more money, like say, for example, someone might be getting 30% for hearing loss, which entitles them to a monthly award. I will always assist them in filing an additional VA claim for their asbestos. I don't make any money from it, to try and get that award up to 100%. So they're maximizing their recovery from the VA and maximizing the recovery from the asbestos case because there's no impact on a VA disability. I want to add to that any recovery that we get for our clients is considered a personal injury settlement. It is not considered income. So not only does it not impact our clients' VA disability, they're still going to get their monthly check from the VA. They're also going to receive money from our office tax-free. They don't have to pay taxes on any settlements. And it's significant. I mean, if we get a client $3 million, that saves them $1 million. It doesn't save them because it's not income. It's considered a personal injury settlement. And since they are already retired, it is not replacing income. It is to compensate them for an injury. So our clients receive that money tax-free right into the bank and no impact on disability. Now, don't get me wrong, the lawyers, we got to pay tax. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Steve. I said the lawyers.
Oh, go ahead.
The lawyers have to pay tax. Don't get me wrong. On our portion of the recovery, we pay tax. The clients, though, they don't have to pay tax on their recovery.
I never knew that about settlements. That's amazing. Is there a statute of limitations, Michael?
Depends on which state you're in. The answer is yes. Every state does have a statute of limitations. It depends on which state you're in, how long you have to file a case. Now, what I will say is this: the statute begins to run on diagnosis of an asbestos disease. Now, let me just repeat that. Diagnosis of an asbestos disease. So if someone gets diagnosed with, say, lung cancer, their statute of limitations does not begin to run at their diagnosis of lung cancer because it has not been diagnosed as an asbestos related lung cancer. It's just been diagnosed as lung cancer. That person doesn't know they have a case until it's diagnosed as an asbestos related lung cancer. So someone might get diagnosed with, say someone died of lung cancer 4 years ago, and they call my office. And here in California, the statute of limitations to file a wrongful death case is 1 year from date of death. 1 year. And this person died 4 years ago of lung cancer. Not asbestos lung cancer, but lung cancer. That person who died 4 years ago, I may still be able to bring a case for them, because once I investigate their case and their medical records and send them off to an expert, if that expert believes that is an asbestos-related lung cancer, that diagnosis that he makes today is when the statute of limitations starts to run. So even though that person might have died 4 years ago, and the statute of limitations in California is 1 year from the date of death, or when they knew or should have known that it was an asbestos disease, and they didn't know till 4 years after death. So it varies from state to state. Anybody who is living can typically file a lawsuit. If you're living, your statute hasn't run. It's more the wrongful death cases that we get concerned about. Some states 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And for mesothelioma, if you're diagnosed with mesothelioma, that is an asbestos disease. Your statute starts to run immediately. Nothing more devastating for me than to have someone call and say, you know, my dad died of mesothelioma, but he died 6 years ago. And I look at it and the statute of limitations has definitely run. I can't file a claim. All the statute of limitations have run on all those 30 billion in trust claims. Those you typically have 3 years to file. And I've got to tell that person, look, if you contacted me 3 years ago, you probably would have had a $3 million case. But if I file your case now, every single defendant is going to file a motion to dismiss based on the statute of limitations because you didn't act quickly enough. And so I can't file that case despite the fact you would have had a multi-million-dollar case. It happens, and it's devastating to me. And that is one of my concerns. Something we mentioned is people say, well, I already get a disability from the VA. What do I need this case for? I don't think they realize they're entitled to millions and millions of dollars, and it has no impact on their VA disability. But people, automatically assume that's all they get. You've mentioned, and I know
you're a big gulp.
Right. I've noticed over the years, you mentioned VA disability. It's something that we help clients on. We don't make money on it. But where we're really able to help clients is by putting together the medical records and the exposure records to show that they were exposed to asbestos in the military and that they now have an asbestos-related disease. All of these free VA clinics and the other things, they're not helpful to victims on asbestos claims. They may be very helpful on other claims. So if somebody out there may have a VA disability claim, I will work on these for free. I will try to help you, but I think I get lots of calls from people, one, who may not realize they have a VA disability claim because they didn't know they were exposed to asbestos in the Air Force, for example, or maybe in the Army. You know, like say they were in the Army, but they were transported on ships over to Vietnam, 6 weeks over, 6 weeks back, 6 weeks over. That's 24 weeks straight, 24 hours a day of being exposed to asbestos on a ship. So I'm happy to help any of these people. And VA disability claims, I think victims of asbestos disease don't get enough help in those. So I also like to help people with those, and I'm glad you mentioned them.
Michael, it's amazing how fast your show goes by. Tell people again how they can reach you, your phone number, your website. How do they get it? Because we have so many people who are listening on iHeart right now and Spotify who don't see the scroll going across the screen.
Well, first of all, thank you all out there for listening. I really appreciate your time.
Great questions today.
I can be reached at 1-800-970-DUST, D-U-S-T, which is also 3878. And direct to my office is 415-895-5175. We also have a website, mesothelioma.pro, mesothelioma.pro. So please, any listeners out there, reach out to me at any time. And Steve, as always, I appreciate very much your time.
Love doing your show. Attorney Michael, I got to tell you, I love doing your show. I know I already had 3 people say they're going to contact friends and relatives about you. You never know who's listening, do you?
You never do. You know, it might be my competitors, it might be my friends, it might be, and I hope random people with asbestos diseases. And just thank you all for listening. I appreciate it.
Okay, Attorney Michael Mandelbrot. Well, he'll be back again with us next month, and plus we'll be replaying the show. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Stephen. Have a great day, and everyone else out there, have a great day. All right, take care.
That's Attorney Michael Mandelbrot. He'll be back again with us next month. That'll do it for us today. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.